Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about why cash is king for your emergency fund and queen for that short-term savings. So if you think about a year ago, we did not have any interest rates, guys. A lot of savings accounts were paying a 0.01 on the money that you held at financial institutions. Now, there are some larger institutions at this point that still do pay next to nothing, but there are a lot that pay an incredible amount. Now, when you think about your emergency fund, this is something that we've really stressed for a long time. You really want to get 3 to 6 months in your emergency fund. That is your ultimate goal. Now, depending on where your job market is, your job stability, how your health is, if you know you're going to have upcoming expenses, you might want to aim even higher when it comes to that emergency fund that you're sitting on hand. Now, why does it make a big difference, guys? Is because you can utilize the emergency fund versus borrowing additional money. And coupled with right now with interest rates that have been soaring, we have seen 9 interest rate increases in about the last year and 2 months. Cash investments have a very sizable return. If you're sitting on $30, $40, $50,000 in your emergency fund, that's going to cover 6, 12 months of expenses. Putting that into a high yield savings account, possibly even looking at CDs, you can make a very considerable amount back now than you could, again, about a year ago. Now, the national average right now for regular savings accounts is a 0.39. So when you think again of COVID times where it was a 0.01, they've actually raised it to a 0.39. That is on your basic savings accounts. But again, you can do much better from this. So what you want to aim to do with this emergency fund, guys, is put it into a high yield saving that is protected from the FDIC. You also want to know what the coverage is, what kind of rate you're going to be getting. Now, there are a few online accounts that are paying 4.75 APY or higher. They are competing amongst each other, guys. And if you're saving with that emergency fund, you are the winner. Some of the banks like Ally, Citibank, SoFi offer some of the best rates in town. Personally, I go with M1 Finance. I have a referral link right down below, guys, an affiliate link. They do have a 5.0 savings account, which is absolutely astronomical when you think of the savings accounts and where they were. Second option is a certificate of deposit. Now, CDs are a good choice because you can get a higher rate of return. However, it seems right now that CD rates are almost mirroring for the majority of people what we're seeing in those high yield savings. Even now, I know a couple banks that have 4.5%, 5% CDs, which is rate on deposit or rate on the exact same interest rate that we're seeing some of the online banks again that are yielding with a higher term. Now, one thing you do have to remember with those CDs, guys, it is a certificate deposit. It is a time deposit. So your money is locked up, which means from the time that you lock up the money until the maturity date could be 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, possibly even longer. Now, during that period of having that money locked up in a CD, there is usually a penalty, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months of interest that you will suffer from taking that money out. So again, when it comes to the emergency fund, guys, if you are going the CD route, you do not want to put every penny into that CD. So theoretically, let's say you have $30,000. My personal experience, I would keep 10,000 of it liquid in a high yield savings account. The other 20,000, I would probably stick into a CD if it was offering a higher rate, which again, you really have to shop around, guys, because there's a lot of places that will keep that full $30,000 completely liquid without having to lock it up into a CD. And a lot of places, it is yielding more money than you would get if you did lock up the term deposit. Now, one thing to remember, guys, saving is key for any short-term goals. When you look at 1 to 3 years, this money should not go into the stock market. It should not go into things that can really lose value, because when an emergency happens, if the money has lost value, essentially you're going to be getting a far less return. Or when you need the money might not be available, which is the reason why we stay with FDIC insured accounts, and we also stay with time deposits. If you're putting it again into an investment, let's say you put $30,000 in 2022, the market tanks about 30%. That is right, guys. That emergency fund could be suffering for the long term just because of how you built that. So the question is, how do we get to that emergency fund, guys? There are a lot of different ways, kind of hacks to build up your savings. One thing that I really, really want to stress, guys, is the automation aspect. Now, this is probably one of the biggest things that people actually overlook. So when you're going through and you're building out your budget and you say, okay, I need, let's say $4,000 every single month. I want 3 to 6 months. So being on $4,000, we're going to go ahead and put $20,000 away for that emergency fund, and we want to save it over the next 3 years. Mathematically, breaking that out, guys, how much do you have to save every single week? How much do you have to save every 2 weeks when you get paid? If you automate it, if you literally direct deposit it, and my recommendation, guys, is when you're direct depositing the money that you're going to be utilizing to build up that emergency fund, that it does not go into your regular accounts. The reason for this, guys, is really twofold. Number one, you have super ease to get to it. That is one of the really, really big things, guys, is if you put money, let's just say in a savings account, the savings account is linked to your checking account. It is very easy just to transfer over a portion of that emergency fund, then leaving your emergency fund short on funds for things that are not truly an emergency. Now, another big thing and a trick, kind of a psychological or a mental trick that you can think of, guys, is a lot of people name their accounts. Now, this is a trick or a hack, whatever you want to call it, that I've actually been using for quite a bit of time. So when you go to log into your account and you see an account that is called emergency fund, just like you can name it home fund, you can name it your vacation fund, you can name it the wedding fund, whatever it may be, guys, when you put an actual tag onto that account, when you go in there, you will double check yourself. You will really think about, is it truly an emergency? Before you go and you dip into that fund, you could even put a year tagged on it. You could say, your 2026 emergency fund, knowing by 2026, you want that emergency fund to be fully vested or fully built within there. And again, when you keep stacking money aside automatically, when it builds with the compounding interest of a 5% or even higher, it makes a big difference, guys. That emergency fund that you have 30, over the course of a couple months can have well over $30,000, which is really, really interesting to think. So number one, guys, of course, kind of as a recap, map out your goals. Calculate how much you need. So if you want to do a vacation, if you want to do a wedding, a new vehicle, whatever it may be, just saving up even for an emergency fund, earmark how much money you want to put it in the budget, make sure you're setting it aside every month. That way you can really get there. Savings has to become a habit. In this day and age, guys, where we almost have $1 trillion in credit card debt, savings has to be a conscious effort for each one of us, guys. The spending at some point really does have to stop. It gets really, really scary when you start looking and kind of playing with possibly doing the bankruptcy, having to find another job just to support the debt that you've already accumulated. There are a lot of services. There are a lot of complete free services, guys, that can help you with debt consolidation, that can help you with debt mitigation. There's also reworking the budget, things of that nature. So guys, that'll do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.